As a registered dietitian, I naturally read a lot about nutrition. Mostly research papers, which I rely on heavily to write science-based articles, whether for Veggies and More or for other online media. But once in a while, I also enjoy the odd book or audiobook. And the only reason I say once in a while is because I'm the type of person that tends to enjoy books written based on research. And when it comes to nutrition books, I find that many tend to be written by authors that prefer sensationalism, or that have a very black or white way of thinking about nutrition, or that cherry-pick their studies in order to make their stance sound stronger than it truly is. And I'm not a very big fan of that. But over the years, I have come across a handful of books that are based on sound research and that I can definitely recommend to vegan or veg-curious mamas. And in this video, I'd like to share 4 of my favorites. Before we get started, I'd like to point out that all of the books that I'm about to talk about have a few things in common. First, they're written by experts in their field, whether that's registered dietitians or medical doctors. And I know that this is not necessarily given that the book is going to be good just because they're written by experts, but for me, it's a good starting point. Second, they don't promote going to extremes in the way that you eat. They're based on a balanced way of eating plant-based that makes sure that the reader will get all of the vitamins and minerals that their body needs. Third, they're heavily referenced, which to me is really important because a nutrition book that doesn't support their claims with references to scientific studies is more of an opinion piece than a source of sound nutrition information. And fourth, when you check the references, they actually do support the claims that the author makes. And I know that this sounds like a given, but I've come across way more than my fair share of books in which this wasn't the case. All right, and with that said, let's get into it. The first book I'd like to talk about is Becoming a Vegan, which is considered somewhat of the encyclopedia of vegan nutrition. It's written by 2 registered dietitians, Brenda Davis from the US and Vicenzo Melina, a fellow Canadian. And it covers all of the basics of nutrition in depth, the vitamins and minerals that you will need, and it addresses also some areas that you might want to pay special attention to, and also how to resolve any concerns that you may have with the diet. There are 2 versions. The first is an express edition published in 2013, and the second is a more comprehensive edition published in 2014. Now, the more comprehensive edition is the one that I've read. It's aimed at healthcare professionals, so it goes very in-depth, and I must say that it's a bit of a drier read, more textbook style. So if you're a healthcare professional, this one might be a really good read for you, but if you're not, I would maybe suggest going for the Express edition. I haven't read it myself, but from the looks of it, it looks like an easier read while still providing all of the information that you would expect from this book. I particularly enjoyed the chapters on expecting vegans, which covers pregnancy and lactation. And there's also chapters on all the different life stages, including infancy, childhood, adolescence, and they provide sample meal plans for all of them. So it's a really good way to get inspired as to what to eat yourself or what to feed your vegan babies. The second book I'd like to suggest is called Vegan for Life, and again it's written by 2 registered dietitians, Jack Norris and Virginia Messina, both registered in the US. It was published in 2011, so it's a bit of an older read, but again it covers all of the nutrition basics throughout all life stages, including infancy, childhood, adolescence, and also has some chapters on vegan pregnancy and vegan lactation. And what I find really interesting about this book is that it also covers some controversial topics, for instance, raw veganism in children, or whether it's safe to eat soy, which are topics that I often see come up online. Just keep in mind that although they do reference all of their nutrition claims, so you can check out the studies, it was written, I guess at this point, more than 8 years ago, so it's probably a good idea to check the authors' websites for the most up-to-date information. My third recommendation is Vegan for Her. It's a particularly interesting read because it covers the health and nutrition concerns specific to women. It was written by Virginia Messina, which is a registered dietitian in the US, and G.L. Fields, which is a vegan chef, and it was published back in 2013. It has chapters on a variety of health topics, and I particularly enjoyed the discussions on fertility and on diet and hormones, And it also has a chapter on how to include veganism beyond the plate, so how to easily integrate veganism in other aspects of your life rather than just diet, which I found to be a nice addition. As a dietitian, I also appreciated that the authors discussed when healthy eating can become an unhealthy obsession, which is known as orthorexia, and also how to ditch the diet mentality and rely on intuitive eating instead to find happiness beyond the scale. And for those of you that like to cook based on recipes, the authors also included a few very tasty sounding ones near the very end that you might enjoy. The last book I'd like to recommend is titled How Not to Die, and you might have heard of it. It's written by Dr. Michael Greger, and it was published back in 2015. Now, I'm not always a fan of books written by medical doctors because I find that a lot of them rely on diet advice that's more aimed at selling diet plans or weight loss plans rather than helping the reader make sustainable lifelong changes. But that's absolutely not the case with this book, and this is actually a book that I offer to all of my close relatives, because it's heavily researched and heavily referenced throughout. How Not to Die is not a book about avoiding death, but rather about avoiding death from mostly preventable diseases through the diet choices that you make. It's split into two parts. Part one focuses on the plant foods scientifically shown to reduce the risk of diseases such as heart disease or type 2 diabetes, for example. And part two focuses on how to take the theoretical knowledge learned in part one and to apply it practically into your life. For example, it shares a list of 12 foods that you should try to include every day on your plate to stay healthy and fend off disease. So those are my 4 favorite vegan nutrition books so far. Now I know that this list is short, and if you're a seasoned vegan, you've probably read most of these already, but I have yet to find other vegan nutrition books that I can fully stand behind. On the other hand, there are a few books on other aspects of veganism that I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on and reading. For instance, Why We Love Dogs, Eat Pigs, and Wear Cows by Melanie Joy, Change of Heart by Nick Cooney, and perhaps also Millennial Vegan by Casey Taft. And of course, Vegan Nutrition for Pregnancy and Breastfeeding by Visanto Melina and Brenda Davis when it comes out later this year around April, I think. Now, what are yours? I'm always up for a good read, so feel free to share them in the comments below. I'd love to check them out. And with that said, that's it for today. Until next time, ciao ciao!